On this week's episode of the Jesse T Show podcast, the amazing and powerful Michael J. Coles, entrepreneur, founder, and all-around titan.
Well, Jesse, it's great to be here with you on your show, and I'm excited, especially sitting in this area that is just exploding around you with growth.
Yep.
Must be exciting to look out every day and see what's happening.
It's incredible what's going on with the city, and as you mentioned, you know a bit better than I do. So This whole building and this whole area wasn't what it used to be.
Yeah, this used to be one big building, and now it's 6 or 7 big buildings. You got the Braves Stadium right across the street.
Yep.
How good is that?
Unbelievable. Have you heard about the new merger and the name for the it's changing from SunTrust Park to Truist. So it's two banks coming together, and I don't think anybody's happy with the name.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Truist is I want to say it's BB&T and First Citizens maybe. It's two of those banks coming together, and they decided to buy out everything, and now it's not going to be SunTrust Park anymore, which sounds so good.
Why? Yeah, it's such a great name.
Yeah, right? So Truist sounds a little funky.
Yeah, it does.
No one seems to like it, but this show's all about you, Michael. You've done a lot of things in your career, and you have a lot of things you're working on and things you're looking to get message out to people to kind of hear and help them grow in their lives and things that they're doing. So just wanted to have you on and share your story. So if you want to jump in and tell the world a little bit about Michael.
Well, as you know, I just a year ago I published a book, and I've been on literally a book tour for a year. And I didn't write the book to brag about my career. I wrote the book to hopefully motivate people to step out of their safe space and do more than they think they can. Because I really felt like I've been successful. I've been very fortunate. But I think the kind of success that I've had and the kind of businesses I've been involved in are very relatable to people. I read all kinds of business books, but if I read a book about Steve Jobs, I might glean something out of it, but I would never honestly believe that I could ever do what he did necessarily. And I think that for a lot of people, that's what happens when they read these books about success.
Yep.
It's such a big success that it's not even really relatable. And so I think my career, and I know this for a fact because as an example, I was the co-founder of the Great American Cookie Company, and I've taken the story of the cookie company to Fortune 100 companies and all the way down to kindergarten classes. Yep. In kindergarten class, where I've actually brought an oven and batter and taught the kids how to go in the cookie business. Yep. Kids who might not think they could ever be in business because business seems so complicated. But cookies is like lemonade stand in some ways, and so kids can relate to it. So that was the purpose of the book.
Yep.
The purpose of it was hopefully people will read it, they'll say, you know what, I can do that. And the last line of my book is, I know you can do this because I did. So
there's a lot to go into there, and you talk about before we jumped on air, the process to get all this compiled. 25 years of, saving notes and scratching on Post-its, and just talk a little bit about that so people can understand how long it took to get, and like the process behind meeting with people to help you get the book to come to life.
Yeah, I think if I had really, I started writing the book 25 years ago, maybe, well, now it's longer, it's probably 30 years ago. I got the idea to write this book. But if I had written it 30 years ago, it wouldn't have been as good a book. Sure. Because there were experiences that I didn't know I would have that I wound up having. I mean, I never imagined, as an example, I never imagined I'd run for Congress, against Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Yep. I never imagined I'd run for the U.S. Senate. I would never have imagined some of the things that I've been able to do. And they're not there to boast. They're there because this isn't still, all the stuff that's going on, this is still the most amazing country in the world.
I agree.
And that the American dream is alive and well. And it may be harder for people to see it. I mean, it was, my father it was the constant thing about them. Even though his life didn't probably turn out the way he wanted it, he drilled that into me about living the American dream. Yep. And I've been very fortunate. So the book itself, I collected scraps of paper and stationery and napkins, and then smartphones came out, and I was able to start putting stuff into Notepad. And I finally got around to realizing that this could go on forever.
Yep.
And the wake-up call was that you just got to get around. You got to do this. I have been absolutely taken back by the success the book has had, the places I've been able to go and talk about the book, and the kind of people that have come up to me and telling me exactly why I wrote the book, the impact it's had on them.
What are some of the things that people have been telling you in terms of their feedback and the changes it's made for them in their lives?
Well, I guess the most recent one was one I never expected, but from someone that's a mutual friend of ours, who's your friend.
Sure.
I just met him. He's now my friend.
Sure.
I met him, like a week ago, a guy named Zach Knight. And Zach was deployed to Afghanistan, and he had just started a business. And when he got deployed, he was afraid he was going to lose the business.
Yep.
And when he got to Afghanistan, his grandmother sent him my book, which had just been out.
Wow.
And he read my book, and this is what he told me. He said that the book made him realize that communicating with his wife here in the States, he had the courage, and it said it gave him the courage and it gave him the commitment to make that business work.
Wow.
Even though he was going to be gone for at least a year. And he carried my book every day in his backpack, wherever he was in Afghanistan, and he would read it and reread it. And he said, what he said to me was, you saved my business, you may have saved my life. And I will tell you, if I wrote the book and that's the only experience I ever would have had, it would have been worth writing. Worth writing it, yeah.
There's this mentality nowadays with keynote speaking that everybody wants to. People that have a message or people that are trying to meet some sort of agenda, yes, they want to get in front of as many people as possible and sell the story. But what I learned years ago when I got into speaking was, if you're in a room from 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people, if you can change the life of one person, which is what you're talking about, and you can actually affect the life, like your goal is to change one person if you can in that whole room. It sounds like you did it with just Zach. And I know Zach very well, and he's been an amazing addition to my life in terms of things he's been through in the military and sharing his story. He was on the podcast as well. And for him to be able to have such great success and be so self-aware and have this tool, which was your book, to get him through, I think that speaks volumes of just the chances of fate. Like, what if he didn't get the book? Yeah. What if he didn't write the book? I mean, there's so many what ifs, right? Yeah. So it's incredible.
Well, the other thing is, I have a long-standing relationship out at Kennesaw State University. My wife and I endowed the business school out there, and so it's the Coles College, and all the proceeds from the book go to KSU.
That's awesome.
So it's not that I'm out there promoting this book to make money. I hope it makes a lot of money so that KSU has it. And by the way, one thing you also ought to know, I have a real commitment to veterans. When I campaigned for the U.S. Senate in 1998, I mean, that was the top agenda for me, was how this country has let down veterans on the promises they made when they come back from military service.
It's incredible. You would expect the open arms. And there's certain pockets depending on where you travel in the world. I was in the military. There was places I was received, and if I was wearing my uniform, I was in the Navy, and I would walk through a town, and people would salute at you, even if you're not supposed. I was enlisted, so I shouldn't get saluted, but people don't realize, and so they love and admire the military. And then there's places where you go and people want to throw stuff at you, and so it just depends on where you go. So it's incredible that our people that have served the country, they come back and face those different experiences. And then it's good that there's people like yourself and other people that want to push the agenda forward to shine a light on the good that they do and help them come back to better medical, better education, better opportunity for housing and things like this. So
we've just, my wife and I are establishing, it's not set up yet. We're going to be establishing a scholarship for veterans up at KSU.
That's awesome.
So we're excited about that.
So all this started, and going back through your history, you had started at least 3 businesses, 3 startups altogether?
Yeah. 2 successful.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Okay. One of them was the Great American Cookie, where I feel like you're a co-founder there, and you've seen a lot of success through that venture. Why cookies? How cookies? How did that all come about?
Well, let me go back a little bit too, because my dad went bankrupt when I was 10, and I won't go through the whole story, but by the time I was 13, he always felt he would recover after the bankruptcy, and basically we lost our house. I lost my dog.
Yep.
We had to move back to an apartment, but it wasn't like a bad apartment, and we had all of our stuff, and so it didn't feel that different. Especially when you're 10, I didn't know what bankruptcy really was. But by the time I was 13, my dad, thinking he would recover, continued to live a lifestyle that he couldn't afford.
Yep.
And so at 13, his wages were being so badly garnishy that he was practically not even bringing home a check. So in the middle of the night in February, we literally packed up a car we had nothing. They had sold all the furniture.
Midnight move.
Yeah, and we moved to Florida, which was a debtor's state, so that if he could rebound or even just get a decent job, he would be able to keep his paycheck. And when I woke up that morning, we were living in a 3-bedroom apartment. It was very nice. We had all our furniture and stuff, and it didn't seem that abnormal. All that was gone. We moved to a less than 300 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom. My sister and I had to share a room, which was not the greatest thing. And my parents slept on a porch. No air conditioning in Miami Beach, if you can imagine that. And I woke up the following morning with a decision, which was, am I going to think my dad's going to recover, or am I going to get a job and try to help my family, which sounds similar to what you went through. And so I chose the latter, to get a job and started working. And so I got very lucky when I was 13. I found a mentor. Guy hired me, who I had gotten to know over the months I had been living there. And he virtually was one of the first people to kind of step in and save my life.
Wow.
And taught me, he was in the clothing business, so I wound up working for the next 6 years with him in the clothing business. And as fate would have it, I left there and went to work saving money for college. I got offered a job as I was going to start college in January of the year after I graduated from high school. And I got offered a job by a big company to come on as a trainee, their first trainee. And I wasn't going to do it because I wanted to go to college. And the guy that had recommended me for this job said, look, when you get out of college, you're going to be lucky to interview for a job like this. He said, why don't you do it for a year? And if worst comes to worst, you go to college in a year. So I thought about it, and I thought to myself, I probably should try, at least give it a shot. So as luck would have it, I did really well as a trainee. They wound up offering me a territory after 7 months. I was 20.
Wow.
And
still not even fully formed as an adult yet.
I couldn't even buy a guy a drink if I took him out for lunch. Yeah, so
soda.
So yeah, exactly. So I wound up doing very well. And then that whole clothing career, I wound up moving to Atlanta. I know I'm giving you a long answer.
No, this is great.
But
you get plenty of time.
Yeah, so I always thought I would be in the clothing business for the rest of my life. I loved it.
Yeah. What capacity were you in the clothing business? Were you on the sales side, the manufacturing side, marketing, a little bit of some of all?
Yes.
Yes.
So I started out in retail, and then when I became a manufacturer's rep, so I was selling on the road.
Yep.
And then I loved the business, and so I took a 75% cut in pay to move to Atlanta to become a merchandise manager for the company.
Okay.
So I could learn the inside of manufacturing, distribution, and what that all took. So I took this big cut, moved to Atlanta, and worked again really hard, did really well, and decided, now that I had this knowledge, that I was going to go out on my own. So I was going to start a manufacturing company.
Okay.
I couldn't raise enough money to do it, so I wound up opening up a chain of retail stores here in Atlanta, which eventually went broke. Matter of fact, it was called Panamine, the original $5 pan stores, and people would always come up to me and say, how can you sell these pans for like $5 and make money? Well, it turned out they were right.
Right.
You can.
You tried it.
Yeah, I thought volume would fix everything, and it doesn't.
No.
So eventually that company went bankrupt, and I knew that someday I would go back into business and I would make a mistake, but I wasn't going to make the same mistake.
You learned from that
I
lesson.
learned from that lesson, and I should have learned it way while I was there, because my old boss, Irving, my mentor, had given me very good advice, but I was so full of myself, I ignored it.
That young hubris.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I started a company later. I went back to my former company. I worked there for a while. And then I started a company called the Great American Clothing Company with a partner, which is where the name of the cookie company came from.
Yep.
I did that for about a year and a half. And I had 3 young kids. The business, which had moved to the South, which is why I came to Atlanta, because of inexpensive labor.
Sure.
Well, you know how every business goes, inexpensive labor, then you find somewhere else where it's less expensive.
Yep.
And so it was moving to Asia.
Yep.
And I had 3 small kids. I was traveling 3 days a week. Now it was going to be 3 weeks a month. And I just said, I got to find something else to do.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into opportunities in the clothing business that would allow me to basically either live in Atlanta or live somewhere else where I wouldn't have to travel very much, but in a senior position at a company. And so I went to California for a clothing show, and I saw a cookie store in a mall out there. My partner, we never actually were able to validate whether he saw the same cookie store or a cookie store, because there were about 300 cookie stores in the country at the time.
Yep.
There were 3 big companies, not real big. One had about 100 stores, 2 had about 50.
Yep.
And so when I came back to Atlanta, I told my wife, Donna, I said, I'm going to sell my interest in the clothing business, which, by the way, I didn't give very much money for because it was a startup.
Sure.
And I said, while we're figuring out what we're going to do, let's open a cookie store, one store.
Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we agreed, we both said we'll do it. And I was still looking at other opportunities.
Sure.
And I had a pretty good one that was going to be in New York.
Okay.
But it was the interview was like 2 months away.
Wow.
When they were, so that was fine. Anyway, so it turned out that, I don't know how all things work out, but I called this friend of mine, Arthur Karp, and I was leaving the clothing business, and I was marketing and sales.
Yep.
And he had a sales company, and I was calling him to literally see if he wanted to take over the sales for the company.
Okay.
And he said, well, you guys have been pretty successful. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't want to tell you, because if I tell you what I'm going to do, you're going to laugh. And he said, no, seriously, tell me what you're going to do. And I said, no, I'm serious, you're going to laugh. And he said, come on, tell me what you're going to do. I said, all right, I'm going to open up a store in a mall that sells cookies. And he got hysterical laughing. And he said, you're kidding. He said, Susan and I are working on the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Serendipity.
Yeah. So I said, well, what have you worked on? And he said, well, why don't you come over? So I called Donna. We went to Arthur's house. I haven't told anybody this story for years. But anyway, I put everything down that I had put together, which was equipment, size of store, decor, training, all the parts of the business.
Processes,
to run it.
Manual handbook kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Arthur had worked on franchising, real estate, and the legal components of all of that. And when you put our 2 thoughts together, the things we had both worked on, we had a whole.
Yep.
We had a complete. So we decided we'd do it together. And so we started the company with $8,000. We borrowed $25,000. We had to put everything on the line to get that $25,000. And then we wound up signing a lease at Perimeter Mall. Now think about this. In 1977, we signed a lease at Perimeter Mall. The rent was $25,000 a year, and we were selling cookies for 30 cents a piece. If you do the math,
it's a lot of cookies.
It's a lot of cookies. And that's why no one really wanted to give us a loan or lease us a space, because they never thought we would be successful.
Sure.
And so there's a long, funny story about the company. Because if you hear that we invested $8,000, and then we sold the company, in 1998 with sales over $100 million, you have to think that the company went smooth right from the very beginning.
It's never the case.
Never the case. So when you hear that $8,000, and when we sold the company, it was like $100 million company, people always think things must have gone really smooth from the very beginning. So let me take you back a little bit. I'll take you back first of all, we had a very difficult time getting our first location. Again, because nobody thought we could sell enough cookies to pay the rent.
Right.
And like CNS Bank, when they loaned us $25,000 and we had to personally guarantee it, you know, most of the time when you hear that, personal guarantee, it's just a document you sign, you personally guarantee it.
Yep.
They were so confident that we would fail that they literally sent a forensic accountant
Yep.
to both of our homes to inventory all of our personal assets. We had to turn the titles over to our cars, because when we failed, they didn't want to have to go looking for stuff. They wanted to know where everything was.
Wow.
And be able to seize it. They basically told us that, and discouraging us from taking the money. They didn't want us to take the money.
Yep. Yep.
Anyway, so the first day of business, after we finally got a lease, a guy named Jeff Weil, who was there to turn around Perimeter Mall. Perimeter Mall was nothing like it is today. It was failing, not a failing mall, but it was one of the worst. It was probably the worst mall in Atlanta because it had been killed by Cumberland.
Sure.
It was a very small mall when it first opened.
Yep.
Anyway, so they brought in this guy Jeff Weil to turn the mall around, and he took a big chance on us because there were 3 big companies. We were 2 guys out of the clothing business with no money. So we thought on our very first day, the way we had no money for marketing, we printed up flyers that said that on June 29th, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 12 noon, we would give away free cookies.
Sure.
And we passed out flyers to the surrounding neighborhoods
Yep.
and all the mall employees. We figured if we could get someone to come for a free cookie, they would taste it, they would come back and buy it. We're the first cookie store in Atlanta. And so the 29th, we showed up. We're all excited about getting the store open. Put that first batch of 300 cookies in the oven. The oven was a big revolving oven. You could actually watch the cookies bake from the mall
Yep.
hall, from the
One of the draws to the for
exactly.
clients. Yeah.
Smell and look.
Yep.
And so, but the gate's down, so the people are just looking through the window watching the cookies bake. When they go in the oven, they look like ice cream scoops because they're all hand scooped. And they eventually start to flatten out. At 15 minutes after we put them in the oven, at 350 degrees, the bell went off. Cookies are they can look in the sides, so there's a light on, and they're golden brown.
Perfect.
Perfect cookies, cracking with steam coming out. And so we decided, because we by the way, we looked out in the mall, there were about 80, maybe 100 people out there.
So you had a line brewing.
We were excited because we didn't know if anybody would even show up for free cookies.
Yeah.
And so we decided that all the employees of the store were about to start this business would all put their hand on the oven door and open it, in this gesture.
Yeah.
And it was my wife, Donna, my partner, Arthur, and his wife, Susan, their son, Billy, and my mother, Lee, no paid employees because we couldn't afford them.
Bootstrapping.
Yeah. So we open up this oven door and we look inside these magnificent 300 golden brown chocolate chip cookies sitting on their trays at 350 degrees. And we realized exactly at that moment that we had forgotten oven mitts.
No.
And we had no rags in the store. No. We had no napkins.
Yep.
We had no way to get the trays out of the oven. So we're watching these cookies sitting there, and the people out in the mall have no idea, but they're watching the cookies go round and round, going from golden brown to a much darker shade of brown, to the cookies catching on fire. Smoke was coming out of the oven. We're on a combined air conditioning system with Park Lane Hosiery, which is right next door. People were running out of Park Lane Hosiery screaming because they thought the mall was on fire. The fire department came, and I remember watching Jeff Weil, the mall manager, weave his way through the firemen, and walking up to the store, and he could have broken our lease right there.
Yeah.
There was a deemed insecure part of the lease. He could have just said, you know what, guys, you're done. But he didn't. He just looked inside and asked one question to ask. Is this what it's going to be like every day, guys? And we tried to reassure him one more time about this, what great businessmen we were.
Yep.
And it was just proof of, how little even though we had studied the business for 10 months.
Yep.
And this is the metaphor I like to share with people, is that the difference between success and failure in a business is never what you plan for. It's how you deal with the unexpected.
Absolutely true.
That's what defines you.
Yep.
Anyway, we opened the next day, And we had pulled off like the greatest marketing scam because we passed out flyers again around the neighborhoods in all one place that said, oops, tomorrow again, free cookies, 9 o'clock to 12. And we had like 500 people now in the mall.
Wow.
Who were coming to see what these two idiots were going to do today.
Yeah.
Are they going to finish the job and actually burn them all down? And so we opened the next day to great success. In the first 30 days, we had to do $12,000 to break even. We did over 30. That store wound up doing almost over $600,000 its first year.
Wow.
We, instead of having to beg for spaces, we had people, mall developers coming from all over the country.
Wanting you as an anchor.
Yeah, wanting us to be in the mall.
Yep.
We had people applying for franchises. Overnight, we had become the highest revenue cookie store basically in the country.
Wow.
And so everything you would think would be in place for the company to be a success. Well, 6 weeks after we started the company, I woke up in Northside Hospital, which is down the road.
Yep.
2 doctors standing over my bed telling me I was going to live, but been involved in a near-fatal motorcycle accident, and I would probably never walk normally again. I would always need some type of aid, either canes or crutches. But considering the alternative, not waking up at all, I thought that was okay.
Yep.
I started a rehab program in the hospital, then out of the hospital. But about 9 months after my accident, I had an incident with my daughter Taryn, who was 3 years old at the time, that virtually changed my business life and my physical life forever. She asked me, we were going up our driveway to get the mail, and she asked me if I'd race her to the mailbox. And I was on 2 canes at the time. And I figured even on 2 canes I could beat her up the driveway. But I'd never tried running or doing anything like that in 9 months. And when I took off to run, the pain was absolutely excruciating. And before I could make an excuse to her, she saw what was happening even at 3.
Yep.
And she said to me, "Daddy, you know what? I'm actually really tired today. I don't really feel like running."
Wow.
And it was devastating.
Yep.
Because as I said, it was the pain was excruciating. It was the first time since my accident that I really realized I was disabled. But it wasn't so much disabled in my legs. It was disabled in my mind, because I consider today, and tell you, at 33, learning how to walk again really hurts.
Yep.
And so I was living in this safety zone that doctors had given me. And all my life, because I grew up like you, a poor kid, people had always told me what my limits were, and it always gave me an incentive to prove them wrong. But this time, again, I was living in that safety zone that doctors gave me. And I came back in the house and said to Don, I don't know if I can get any better, but I got to try something else.
Good for you.
This is not working.
Yep.
And so I started riding a stationary bike for aerobics. I started riding a regular bike. I started riding longer and longer distances from my home. And at the same time, we built the cookie company to its national success. I set 3 world records riding across the United States on a bicycle in '82 from Savannah to San Diego in about 15 days. In 1983, I tried to break my record. I was on a sub 9-day record. I would have crossed the country in about 8.5 days. I was less than 500 miles from San Diego when I got hit by a dust devil, which is a dwarf tornado, crashed to the ground, broke my collarbone. I would have broken the record by over a week. So I did it again in 1984. I had horrible weather. I had headwinds of 30 miles an hour when I left Savannah that went all the way up to 70 miles an hour when I got to California. But I did manage to get across the country and broke my record by over 4 days, 11 days, 8 hours, 15 minutes. And then in 1989, I joined a 4-man team to do the Race Across America, which went from LA to New York. It was some 3,000 miles. We won the Race Across America. We beat 4 other teams. We crossed the country in 5 days, 1 hour, 8 minutes. It's the fastest crossing of America ever on a bicycle by a 4-man team, and it's the fastest 3,000 miles ever covered under human power. And I'm proud to sit here with you today and tell you that both records still stand.
Incredible. Incredible. You're talking to a guy that's huge into, the cliche term these days is biohacking or human optimization and training and working your way through injuries and a lot of the mental limits people have put on us and you put on yourself through your life. And so, touching on all those there's a narrative in there that you had to keep fighting, like your whole life. You keep pushing through these adversities. And so, what was the mindset shift for you? Yes, you had the pain of not being able to play with your kids, and I tell this story all the time. I want to be able to be healthy enough and work on my health now to be able to play with my kids 70s, 80s, run around, chase them if I'm lucky, But what's the mindset that you have to have going through from being on 2 canes, handicapped, disabled, right, to being able to set these records? So what were you, content you were consuming, people you were talking to, like what changed? What was the paradigm shift?
Well, I guess here's what I would say. I would say that as the distances, as I was riding, because one of the things a lot of people make a big mistake, they set a lofty goal and they don't set intermediate goals. Yep. And if you don't set intermediate goals, you'll never get to the big goal because you'll just lose confidence. Yeah, you get discouraged. Good word. Yeah, and so I did that. Like for me, we had a very steep driveway. So my first goal was to ride a bike up my driveway. Okay. Because originally when I started, I had to walk up the driveway with the bike. Yep. And then I was to get to the end of the road, and then all that. But
step by step.
Yeah.
Incrementally.
And so I rode from Dunwoody, Georgia, in 1981. I rode my bike from Dunwoody up to Helen. It was 90 miles. Yep. It took me 12 and a half hours. And I had to do the last 5 miles, 6 miles, whatever it was, on one leg, because my left leg cramped up so bad, I couldn't even use it. And I managed to, what I would say, limp across, on my bike. But when I went across the Chattahoochee River, I thought to myself, I'm really lucky that I had the determination to try to get better. And I think what it really was is that I didn't set big goals. And so what got me through the pain, what got me through the ability to actually have a full rotation with my leg was knowing that each day I could see some improvement, Yep. And I remember at one point thinking to myself, hey, if I never get better than this, it's a lot better than what I thought I was going to wind up being like. And when I went across the river, I thought, you know what? I bet there's a lot of people out there that have just given up. And what could I do on the bike, that could set an example for them that you just can't quit. Yep. And so I started conjuring up this idea of riding coast to coast on the bike. Originally, it was 30 days. I was going to try to get across the country in 30 days. And then it was, I'd get across the country in 20 days. And then it was 10 days.
The competitive side starts coming up.
Yeah. Yep. And when I did it the first time, it was almost like, I never intended to be full-time in the cookie business. When I got across the country the first time in '82, I never expected to ever do it again. Yep. And so, but when I did it, I realized I could have done it so much faster if I was better prepared. Because all I had, my whole crew, was my wife and my daughter, Taryn. Yep. And if to do this, you got to be on the bike like almost 24 hours a day. Yeah. And so, as I was riding across the country, I started thinking about if I did it again, how I would do it differently. And the Race Across America started the same year, '82. And so, so before that, there was really no way to ever get anybody to tell you how you do this. Yeah. But
Before Google and metrics and all these things.
Yeah. So I started figuring it out as I was riding, and I knew I would get across. I would hold my bike up in the air, but I felt no sense of accomplishment because I knew I could have done it much faster.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah. And so in the following year, I had a crew and had a judge. Yep. I had all of that, to do it. So
prepped much differently. This reminds me of a documentary I watched not too long ago called The Iron Cowboy. If you've heard of this, it's a gentleman. He calls himself the Iron Cowboy. He's been dubbed that, but he does triathlons, and he wanted to do a triathlon a day in all 50 states. So 50 triathlons back to back to back to back in every single state. And his whole, what you're talking about, it's giving me chills about having the right crew. And he has this RV bus that's sponsored by these big corporations, and he's sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night so that he can go do a triathlon a day.
How do you do that? Is there one every day somewhere?
He had it all mapped out. And so however he put together, that's another part, was the logistics and the time crunch to get from state to state to state. So he's driving on the RV, and at one point I think he takes a plane so he could do one in Alaska and all these things. But if you get a chance on Netflix, I think it's still there. It's called The Iron Cowboy, and it talks to a lot of what you went through with having a crew and having people, initially the crew that you thought would help you through, and now the next iteration, because you're business minded and you're thinking about efficiency and you're thinking about numbers and timing, you have to from year 1 to year 2, it was night and day. And every year after that probably got better and better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And in '89, we did the Race Across America as a 4-man team. The thing that's important to know about this, there were 4 of us on the team. All of us had basically set records across the country. Everybody on the team. We had all done it solo. The team idea was brand new.
Yep.
And no one thought about the fact that the bike would continuously be moving. So when do you go? When does the crew sleep?
Yep.
If the vehicles have to keep moving,
yep.
When does the crew sleep? When do you go buy foodstuffs? And because the first time someone pulled off to buy food, like foodstuffs for the crew and for us,
yep.
It took them 7 hours to catch up to us.
Wow.
Even take 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
7 hours to catch up with us.
It's incredible.
Which meant there was a period of time the crew had no food.
Yep.
We had food.
Yeah.
Because ours was all prepared.
And you had to have your energy and your fuel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
7 hours.
All these things building you, grooming you, breaking comfort zones, callousing your mind, getting stronger, learning more, prepare you for the next iteration in business, Caribou Coffee.
Yeah, so when I lost the U.S. Senate race in 1998, I tried to retire, because I basically sold the company the same year because I thought all the polling said I was going to win that race. And so when someone came along and wanted to buy the company, I'm thinking, like, this is fortuitous, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to have this new job. I'm going to be in Washington. And so when I lost, I basically didn't have a job, and I didn't have a company. So I do what anybody else does. You start consulting,
yeah.
and I didn't do a lot of it.
Yep.
I'm a big fly fisherman, and I love to play golf, although I'm terrible at it. But I got bored pretty quick,
Yep.
And always when you start out, kind of like we did, where you start working at a very young age, you think, what, I'm going to try to retire by the time I'm 40.
Yeah.
That was my goal.
It's a nice thought.
And so I was not much older than 40. I think I was 50, 52, something like that. And I wasn't ready to retire. I didn't even want to think about it, but I didn't know what I would do. So I did some consulting. I started doing a lot of nonprofit work, organizations that my wife and I basically had worked in. Many of them I wound up, becoming chairman of and really taking leadership roles in them. And it's great. And the nonprofit work is so important. And a lot of people, they start out working in an organization, then maybe they give them some wisdom, and then eventually, if you're lucky, you can write a check. I'm sidetracking here a little bit, but I will tell you this. It's so important, if you get to the point to write a check, remember, they also need your work. Because most nonprofits can't afford the kind of talent that can write a check.
Right.
And if they can get that kind of talent to work for them, it can really help more than the money.
Yep.
And so I wound up spending a lot of time doing the things I cared about.
What were some of the nonprofits you worked? That's something that near and dear to my heart. So.
Yeah. So, my focus was education. So obviously KSU.
Yep.
I was chairman for 5 years, and Walker School out in Cobb County. I was the chairman for, I think, 5 or 6 years. But I've been involved with everything from the heart ball. Seriously, I bet you there's 30 nonprofits, but the ones that were near and dear to me at the time were mostly around education.
Yep.
I worked really hard in that arena. And so, and cancer, of course, and turned out later I had my own bout with cancer to deal with. I did a project in Atlanta for the owners, people who had just bought Caribou Coffee 2 years earlier.
Okay.
And I did a project for them. The company wasn't growing, and they basically wanted to find out if they had just made a bad deal. And so I told them I was going to do this study for them. I went to about 50 caribous.
Wow.
All the ones that were
personally.
There. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was their region? Were they all southeast?
No. They're out of Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, so kind of Midwest, upper. Yeah.
Midwest, Washington, Ohio, Georgia.
Yep.
And so I went here. I went to Washington, D.C. and visited stores. I went to Chicago and visited stores, and then my last stint was in Minneapolis, which, by the way, Minneapolis is still the only major city in the United States where Starbucks is not the dominant player.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. So.
Yep.
And matter of fact, when I wound up taking over Caribou, I put a thing in place called Defend Minnesota, because Starbucks was they put 5 real estate people into the state to try to make some headway, and we just stopped them.
Good.
Yeah. So it's still like that now. But at any rate, so I did this project. I felt somewhere in the 30 to 40 stores, I saw something that I wish I had seen earlier, that I frankly had never had the experience of it before. In almost every store I went to, I would see someone during the course of the few hours I would spend come in with a Caribou t-shirt or a Caribou baseball hat. It's common to see Starbucks, coffee mugs.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, everyone, Caribou, or any coffee shop you go to. But I never then and now have ever seen anybody wearing a Starbucks t-shirt. I've never seen them wearing a Starbucks baseball cap. I see plenty of mugs.
Yeah.
I see plenty of mugs.
Yep.
So what it said to me when I saw that about Caribou,
Brand loyalty.
it was it's a brand religion.
Yeah. Cult.
And and that the people that were going to Caribou were their evangelists. As a matter of fact, when I got to Minneapolis, I saw a bumper sticker on the back of a car. It's a true story, that was parked. And it said on the back of it, "Friends don't let friends drink Starbucks." And I thought the company had done it.
Yeah.
But when I went and looked at it, it was an email address of a customer that had done it.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, I've never had the opportunity to ever grow a brand that had that kind of a following. Mm-hmm. All the companies I'd ever worked for, or even the cookie company, the name Great American Cookie just didn't roll off people's mouths. They weren't like telling them, "Don't go to that other cookie store." I never had any experience like that, and even in the clothing business.
Yep.
And so when I got back to Atlanta, I basically said, "You got a great company. You got to make a change in management. I want to buy in. I want to become the CEO and turn this thing around."
Okay.
And anyway, so there's a great story about this that I must share with you, because what my book is really about is not the things that went well. It's all about the things that did not go well.
It's more important.
It's all the things I had to learn from, and all the mistakes that I made that eventually make you better, make you smarter.
Yep.
But I had 4 months to prepare myself to go in to take over the company, and I thought long and hard about what I was going to say that day they had a 20-person management team, senior directors and senior directors. Yep. And I walked in on that first day. They don't know me from, Adam's house cat. And the company was very casual. When you say business casual, this was way beyond. This is what I call softball casual.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I saw a guy walking around with no shoes. There's no joke in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the first thing I knew, I had to be very disruptive. So I came in a 3-piece suit.
Just the complete opposite.
A complete opposite. Yeah.
Yep.
I wanted to be shocking.
Yep.
I wanted them to almost think the worst of me.
Sure.
Because we had a lot of work to do to turn this thing around.
Yep.
And so my opening line to these 20 people sitting in this conference room was, "I've been to 50 Caribou Coffees, and I've yet to have a good experience."
Wow.
And the moment I said it, you could see the eyeballs in the room leave the room.
Yep.
You ever see the movie A Christmas Story?
I have.
Okay,
many times. Yeah. Sometimes a few times in the same day.
So you remember when Ralphie gets out of the car to help his father change the tire?
Yep.
And he steps on the hubcap, and all the nuts go flying up in the air, and Ralphie yells, "Oh, fudge."
Yeah.
But he doesn't say, "Oh, fudge."
Yeah.
He says the queen mother of all customers. I did exactly the same thing, because what I really meant to say was, I've been to 50 Caribou Coffees, and while I've had a great experience in certain parts of the day, it's not consistent.
Yeah.
But if we can make that consistent, we can go from being a good company to being a really great company. But that's not what I said.
That's not what came out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So instead of what I thought would happen, them carrying me around on their shoulders, they wanted to bury me somewhere in the building. And so, instead of taking a couple of weeks maybe to get everybody on board with what the vision of the company could be, it took several months. And there's a lot of great stories in the book about what it took to turn this thing around. But
What's one that you can tease out for the audience? What's something that stands out for you out of the couple that are in the book?
Okay, so I think probably the first week I was there, I met with everybody. I met with the entire senior management team, and then we brought the whole company together, based out of Minneapolis.
Yep.
All the district managers, everybody there, and we had a town hall meeting. So I had gotten, and by the time I got to the town hall meeting, I corrected what I said.
Good.
You know what I mean?
Good.
Yeah. Because I made a mistake once, but I'm not going to do it twice. And so when I got to the town hall meeting, I think people were scared, just as you would expect.
Yep.
Disruption.
Yep. Heads were going to roll, maybe, kind of thing.
Yeah. Who's going to lose their job?
Yep.
So, but I think I calmed everyone down. I brought my wife to the meeting and basically, said, great things about us. And so I'd say by and large, the staff was okay. Yes, this will be okay. So I called. I started going through all the documents. I looked at the mission statement of the company, and I looked at the core values of the business.
Yep.
And I decided that if we were going to build this company together, one, we needed a new mission statement, because the mission statement was very narrow. It was make Caribou Coffee your favorite meeting place, or something like that. It was and it was just narrow.
Yep.
And I wanted, like at the cookie company, it was share the fun of cookies. And when you say that, it's not just about your employees or your customers. It's about your vendors.
Yep.
It's about your people
everyone you touch.
Everywhere, exactly.
Yep.
Everywhere. So I've always believed in mission statements that are very short, very pithy, and in some ways talk about all the touch points of what you're doing.
Yep.
And so I took everybody on a retreat, all 20 again, the same 20 group of people, hired a facilitator. We went into a room which they were not thrilled on a Saturday after work. Yeah, which also wouldn't be any friends. Right. And we spent from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whiteboarding and putting stuff on paper, and we got a lot of great stuff done. A lot of people started coming around,
engaging a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is really good
because you're in the trenches together. It's like a military term where you're battling together. You're seeing crucial things to overcome together. You're working together, and you're building that brotherhood, sisterhood. Yeah.
And so we started. The thing about a mission statement is mission statements can change.
Yep.
But core values should basically stay the same.
Sure.
And the core values that the company had, some of them were okay, but they weren't well thought out.
Yep.
And so it was mission statement and core values. But I was more interested in mission statement. And so we got to some good stuff, and I said, okay, look, I'm leaving. I have to go back to Atlanta on Tuesday. No, on Monday. I have to go back to Atlanta on Monday. I said, I want to put together a group of 5 people to work on this, and I'm going to call Wednesday.
Yep.
And let me know what you've come up with.
How'd you choose the 5? Or how did they choose the 5? So that's important. There's got to be an intentional.
So my assistant that I inherited, who I'd gotten to know a little bit in the week I was there, 10 days I was there, I basically said to her, Beth, I said, why don't you tell me who you think the other 4 people should be?
Okay.
So, because I didn't really know.
Yep.
It was a mistake.
Oh, no.
A mistake I should have, in other words, I should have known better.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I just should have known better.
Yep.
So she put together this group. They met on Monday and Tuesday, and I called in on Wednesday. I was very excited, and I said, so Beth, what did you all come up with? She said, well, we met for 2 hours on Monday and 2 hours on Tuesday, and we all agreed that we should keep the mission statement we have.
Wow.
And I went, I didn't get mad. I said, excuse me? She said, yeah, we think it fits the company. It's perfect. I said, okay. Can you connect me to Karen McBride, who's HR?
Yep.
She was the head of HR. I said, Karen, I think I've made a mistake. And she said, before I could say a word, she said, oh, yeah.
Yep.
She said, boy, did you pick the wrong 5 people.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Another learning lesson.
Yeah. I said, Karen, you pick the 5 people, and you're on it. You're the chair.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
I said, you pick them. And I said, I'm going to call Friday. I want to know what you come up with. And so on Friday I called, and she said, we had 2 great meetings. And she said, we've come up with Caribou Coffee, an experience that makes the day better. And I said, you nailed it.
Yep.
And that was it, because that touches vendors,
Yep.
it touches employees, it touches customers, it touches everybody. And she was the first person to really kind of come around to what I wanted to do with the business. And my mistake that I made was that I didn't realize that I was being played.
Sure. Yeah.
I was being played.
Yep.
But here's the one good thing about what happened at Caribou. We had been in, I'm sure a lot of your guests that are watching this will understand this. You know what same store sales are, where you compare one year against the other. Caribou had been in negative same store sales for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Double digit.
Yep.
Negative same store sales.
That's huge.
Yeah.
In a bad way.
In 7 months, putting this new service platform into place, we went from negative to positive. And everybody would say, well, of course you went positive. You were in the double digit negative. But we did it for 3 years.
Yep.
In
Consistently.
a row. Consistently double digit
Proven.
improvement. And the thing I was the most proud of is we did it with basically the same team.
That's a huge statement.
Yeah.
I go back to one of my mentors. You bring up Minneapolis. He's from there, but he's in Omaha, and Omaha has the Berkshire Hathaway meeting every year. And Warren Buffett obviously runs great companies on all these things, and he's had that same team pretty much for the last few decades.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to go in there and heads don't have to roll to make a point, maybe there was some attrition, some people just decided it wasn't for them, I don't know. But at the end of the day, for them to be the same core group of people, to go from a brand new kind of inciting a riot kind of thing when you went in there, which is awesome. I'm a rebel at heart, so that's great. To going to 3 years later, seeing the success, it speaks volumes.
Took the company public.
The culture was where you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Building culture is a huge thing for a lot of people that watch this and listen to this. And I've seen great cultures in my life, and I've seen horrible cultures in my life and business. And so what are some core tenets you feel that would be imperative for good culture in any company you've ever been a part of?
Well, it's an easy answer for me, because it's the cheapest thing for a company to do. They don't have to go out and buy software. They don't have to go and buy hardware. They don't have to plan these huge retreats. They don't have to do it. All they have to really do is communicate.
Yep.
And let people know why, if they're going to make a change, they need to make sure that the reason comes all the way down to the furthest point away from the business.
Yep.
That they understand.
Yep.
People need to feel valued.
Yep.
And people always think that's all about money, and it's not all about money.
Mm-mm.
It's about knowing what's happening in the company, what's in it for them,
Yep.
and why we're making this change. And you cannot over communicate. Period.
I agree. Any relationship.
Yeah, anything. That's exactly right. Any relationship, whether it's business or personal, it's not hard to do, but you have to be deliberate about it. And so, I think from a cultural standpoint, people who feel that they're not being valued, if you don't feel valued, you cannot have a good culture.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
So, easy one.
The culture building at Caribou had led to the success that ran for years. And then, in this whole conversation, the backbone of this conversation is this book that's going to do so much for the university and giving back. And you believe that sharing with the world is a value add, that you feel almost a calling probably to do that. In the book, there's 3, you'll have to call them what they are, but there's 3 lessons, I guess, right? And in one of them, the most important one you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so what I always refer to is what happened with my daughter Taryn.
Yep.
When I always talk about it changing my business life and my physical life, that incident. And I always knew that if I could get across the country on my bike, even the first time, I'd get my physical life back. I would feel like I was whole again in some way.
Yeah.
And but in 1984, I had something happen that I didn't remember. Because I had a documentary crew following me all the way across the country. We had a media van from in certain cities that would come out and film it.
Yep.
And so when I got to San Diego, what we had written was I got to San Diego and broke my record by 4 days, and that was it. So I know you've heard about things like this, where people remember something from their childhood
Yep.
or their adulthood. They're in a coma or whatever it might be, and years later they remember it. So we had finished the manuscript. We had sent it to the publisher. And that Friday, and I went to sleep that night, and I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning in an absolute cold sweat, because I thought I had had a dream, and I didn't have a dream. I had a memory, and I had to call my co-writer, Catherine, and say, Catherine, we have to rewrite the book.
Wow. How far into the process were you with writing the book?
We turned the manuscript in
So
that day.
At that process, you're near the end.
Yeah, now I was going to go to the readers and the editors and all of that. And she didn't exactly love me at that moment.
Of course not.
and she said, well, what is it? So here's what it is. And I honestly, I never had remembered this. So when I got to San Diego, I had a police escort in every major city we went through, all the way across the country.
Yep.
In 11 days, I'd only slept 22 hours, and the wind had never died down. Not 1 minute of the whole ride. If anybody out there or you ride a bike, you know that you can deal with rain, you can deal with cold, you can deal with heat, because you can take clothes off, you can put clothes back on,
Yep.
you can deal with it. But headwinds are a killer, because there's no way to avoid them. Unless you turn around and go the other way. Yep. You're trying to set a record. You can't really do that. And so when we got to California, the winds were 70 miles an hour. And there is a documentary, by the way, that's on YouTube. If anybody wants to watch it, just all you have to do is put in Michael Cole's bicycle.
Absolutely.
And it'll come up. It's a 45
We'll put it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, it's a 45-minute documentary. Anyway, it shows that in the last 25 miles, at one point, the winds were so bad I had to get off the bike and start walking because you couldn't stay upright. The winds would just blow you over.
Knock you over. So you're walking, pushing the bike.
Walking. It's all, and that's all in the documentary. Anyway, on the last, 12 miles, the wind stopped.
Yep.
I went down the hill, and my crew, because we couldn't get a police escort, and of course we arrived in San Diego at rush hour.
Yep.
And so there was no way to get the motor home and the support vehicle and the media crew. There was no way to get it to follow me through rush hour. So they wisely got my friend Dave Johnson from here to meet me when we got off the interstate and take me the last 5 miles to the courthouse. He would lead me. And they all left. And so they left us with 4 water bottles, basically, and we're going to go these last 5 miles. And we start riding, and we come to a red light, maybe 3 or 4 blocks in, and it was the first time in 11 days that I was not making the decision to stop. Put my foot down, and I felt my right leg start to cramp.
No.
And I was like, this is not good.
Yep.
And so I got back on the bike when the light turned green. I went a few more blocks, red light, stopped, put my leg down, and now both legs started to cramp. And I turned to Dave and I said, this is no joke. And I didn't remember any of this. And the reason I remember it is because they left us at that point, and none of that's in the documentary. And I was, you sleep 22 hours in 11 days, you're not exactly completely lucid.
Delirious.
Yeah, you're not exactly lucid.
Right.
And so I turned to Dave and I said, I can't do it. And he looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. And he said, what do you mean you can't do it? He said, we just have like 4 or 5 miles to go. I said, I got to get some sleep. If I can just go down for 30 minutes. I always joke about this. I remember looking at one of those blue mailboxes on the ground. It looked like a Select Comfort bed. I just wanted to go.
Mirage, right?
I just wanted to go lay up against it and just sleep for 30 minutes.
Yep.
And he said, no, let's keep going. Let's just keep going, see how far we can go. So I said, all right, I'll try to make it to the next light. And so it was the next light.
Yep.
And eventually we made a right turn on Broadway. On the way to the courthouse, there were people clapping on the side of the street. The adrenaline kicked in, and I finished. And the thing about this is that even though I didn't remember it, everything I had done from that moment in business and in my life was predicated from the lesson of those 5 miles, even though I didn't know it. Because what it actually had taught me and how I got through it and how I wound up finishing it was realizing that it doesn't matter how many thousands of miles you ride. It doesn't matter how many hours or days or weeks or months that you put into something, a project, a process, whatever it may be. You've got to finish the last 5 miles.
Yep.
Because if you don't finish the last 5 miles, you will never be prepared for the next 5 miles.
Yep.
And that was in my subconscious and did not come out until I wrote this book.
Incredible. So were you drawn, that's such a huge, powerful overall theme to everything, to going back to learning to walk again under your own power and run again, right? And so those small checkpoints, and this is something I teach, for my clients in my business, what I do in my wealth management business is you have to build that mindset of getting those small victories. And those, right. the human body and the mind is, they need that gratification, but you have to, when you learn how to walk the bike up the hill when you first time taught yourself again, and you learn how to ride the bike down the street, ride the bike to, a couple miles. Was any of that going through your mind for the last 5 miles of drawing back when you were 33 years old, of teaching yourself kind of the incremental wins, like if I could just get to the next stoplight and then I can get to the next part of the block, and then that plus also, I guess, the adrenaline of the people cheering for you kind of put it all together?
Yeah, it was everything you just said.
Yep.
But the biggest thing, honestly, was anger.
Was it really?
Yes, it was anger because my body was failing me again.
Mm-hmm.
And I all I could think to myself was, I've got to finish this. I got to get through this because I got to put this behind me. I can't keep living with wondering if I can break my record.
Yep.
And I'm so close. I have to just take whatever strength I have and finish. And that's because honestly, I was afraid I was going to fall over. My legs were not going to work.
Yep.
But once I realized, even though it was extraordinarily painful to get my legs to keep moving like that because they were so cramped,
yep.
the anger just pushed me.
Overrided.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with anger
Yep.
being a motivator. It's fine.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I didn't want to do it again.
There was motivation there too.
Yeah,
the fear of doing it again.
Exactly. I didn't want to announce to my wife, guess what, 1985, we're doing this again.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted it behind me. And so all of that came to play. But it was extraordinary to me that I did not remember that until we wrote the book.
Incredible. Maybe a defense mechanism from the pain and trauma. Could have been.
Maybe. But, because I was delirious. There's no doubt I was delirious in some of this. You get adrenaline, a rush that kicks in and you feel like everything's fine. But when you're going through a period like that and you're watching a documentary and there's nothing about that on video.
Yeah.
There was none of that.
Yep.
That became my reality. My reality was getting off to San Diego, getting off the interstate in San Diego, and arriving at the courthouse. And there's one bit of film that showing me coming down Broadway. That's it. So that became my reality until I remembered it.
Until you put yourself back in there and something just popped up. Unbelievable life journey. Incredible.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you've been very kind in giving and telling your story and sharing your story. And so, what's next? What's the rest of this year or the next few years going to entail for you and what you're doing?
Well, here's what I would say in closing: is that I didn't know my cookie business. The cookie business was going to be my business. I figured I'd be doing something else. I never expected to. By the way, there is a consistency in my career. Clothing, cookies, Caribou Coffee. You catch the C's? You catching it? Banking,
cycling.
Cash. Cycling. I never thought about that one. So I don't know what's next. Some of the things I've done I never saw coming. I'm taking it one step at a time. Right now, I'm very interested in trying to get this book in as many people's hands as possible that need it.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I would say is, whatever it is, I think I got one more in me. I'd like to do something else again. But the last thing I would say is I wanted to share one last story with you. When that incident happened with my dad and we moved to Florida, and I talk about waking up that morning and the shock of really understanding what bankruptcy is and making the decision to help my family. It was not heroic at all. It was just, like I said, it was a responsibility.
Yep.
I was not happy about it. I don't want anybody out there thinking I was 13 years old and was ready to go from being a kid to being an adult. I know you probably had some of that.
I'm going back there right now. You're putting me back in my 13-year-old body.
Yeah, and so I remember thinking about I needed some motivation, and I started thinking about people who've overcome adversity, and there wasn't that much in my life. But honestly, the first story I thought it was the story of David and Goliath.
Yeah.
And it was the first story I ever remember where someone small was able to win a very big victory. And there's David with nothing more than a slingshot and a few stone walks into the valley against this enormous giant with armor and weapons.
Outgunned, so to speak, strength, everything.
Yeah.
All the odds.
And not only wins the battle, but kills the giant.
Yep.
And that was never my takeaway from that story. For me, the takeaway of that story was always that David walked into the valley without knowing the outcome.
Yep.
He had the strength to
blind faith
to walk into the valley.
Incredible.
And I think all of us, every single day, face Goliath challenges. And Goliath runs throughout my whole book, facing those Goliath challenges. And I think for me, maybe it was learning to walk again, but for everyone else, it's maybe going back to school, starting a new business, starting a new career, trying to get back into shape, losing weight, going through a bad divorce, whatever it is. Those are all Goliath challenges. And I think the thing that people have to ask themselves every single day when they get up is, do I have the strength to take that first step and walk into the valley?
Get the momentum. Unbelievable. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Michael J. Coles, sharing his story with the world. Please make sure you go get the book. It's time to get tough. How cookies, coffee, and a crash led to success, business, and life. Michael J. Coles, the story has been unbelievable. And if people want to find out more about the book or reach out to you, how would they do that?
I have a website. It's mcoles or michaelcolesbook.com.
Okay.
Or M. Coles book. I can't remember. If you put in Michael Coles book, you'll get there.
It'll pop up.
And the book is available at local bookstores as well as Amazon in hardback as well as Kindle.
Yep. He's Michael J. Coles. I'm Jesse T. Catch us next week for the newest episode of the Jesse T. Show. Take care.